Wow, that was a good promo. Welcome in to the Channel Seed Studios for Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere. And I think it's safe to say that this might be the biggest week of Bigger Than 12 yet. I am Jake Brend, co-host of the program, joined by my co-host Derek Duke. Derek, how's it going?
Doing good, man. I had to, as you can see, my background looks a little bit different today, and I'm also wearing a different hat here. I'm not wearing my channel seat hat, so special week for Iowa State, obviously heading into the Big 12 title game, and of course we had some internet issues once again on the show for me, so had to definitely move locations. But what a weekend of football, and to be honest, I am as excited for the Big 12 championship game coming up. I'm super excited. I am disappointed to see the regular season come to an end, but because it felt like just yesterday we were preparing ourselves for the first show of the season, and now we're already heading into bowl season. I say this every single year, but this season went by so damn fast, too fast for my liking. But with that said, it's Big 12 championship weekend, which is literally my Super Bowl every single year, and I look forward to seeing all the Arizona State and Iowa State fans this weekend up in Arlington. And Jake, you're going to be there as well.
Yeah, we have breaking news. I hate to interrupt, but Derek and I will both be at the Big 12 Championship this weekend. Finally get to meet in person. We've been doing this show for like almost 4 months now, but we've both been stuck in our respective states. So I finally get to go down to Texas and truly make this Iowa Everywhere. I cannot wait for the game. I echo everything you said. It's it's what you do this for. It's for games like this. It's for trips like this. And I cannot wait. And I hope that there's a lot of Iowa State fans making the trip courtesy of WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax, because if you've been going to WealthCharter, that means they've been saving you some money. And if they've been saving you some money, hopefully that means you got a little extra cash flow to fund this trip down to Arlington. All jokes aside, Tim Hawkins and his team really, really take care of their clients in Ankeny. Tim was actually at the game Saturday night, looked all bundled up and warm with his son Blaine, one of the greatest Division III quarterbacks in the history of the world. We appreciate Tim Hawkins and his team for supporting Bigger Than 12 in Iowa Everywhere. Go give them your business at WealthCharterRetirement.com to schedule an appointment at their office in Ankeny. A little housekeeping before we get in today's show. It's a different show with the regular season over. We're going to not ditch the 12-pack, but we are going heavy on the Big 12 championship today. So first, we're going to react to the Big 12 or the college football playoff rankings. Then we're going to go in depth on the Big 12 championship in Arlington. We'll still have our Iowa trivia question and random Big 12 quarterback. But here's the new thing. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be giving report cards for every team in the Big 12. And we're going to start at the bottom today with Oklahoma State, UCF, Arizona, and West Virginia. And then, as always, we'll close it out with some picks from across the country of all the championship games. So we've got a good show in store for you today, and let's just dive right on in with the college football playoff rankings. I'll name off the Big 12 teams. Arizona State 15th, Iowa State 16, BYU is 18, and Colorado rounds out the conference in the top 25. The Buffs are ranked 23. And then probably the two most relevant teams that are not Big 12, Boise State comes in at 10th, and Clemson is behind both Arizona State and Iowa State at 17. Derek, initial thoughts on the new rankings?
Boy, I'm going to keep harping on the SEC thing here, and it's the same shit, different week with them. For 4 teams in the top 11 and 5 in the top 14, are we going to see 4 SEC teams in the playoff? I mean, we're looking at where Georgia and Texas are. Those 2 are automatically in, and so is Tennessee at 7, who, by the way, I mean, they have it made. They don't have to do a single thing. They don't have to play next week. They don't have to worry about injuries, nothing. So they're just already in. And you mentioned Boise State at 10, which is obviously something the Big 12 fans are going to want to keep an eye on. So if they lose to UNLV, they should be out. And I just wonder if Arizona State or Iowa State could jump them. And if they lose and somebody locks up from the Big 12, potentially a top 4 spot and get a bye, that would be huge for the Big 12. So everybody who is a Big 12 fan, if you're an Iowa State fan, Arizona State fan, the one thing you can agree on is on Friday night, you are going to be rooting for UNLV to win that game. And then to kind of wrap things up here, my big question is what is the committee going to do with the conference championship games? We already know the loser of the Big 12 championship game isn't getting in. It's the one true conference title game that a playoff spot's actually on the line for. So, but if a team like SMU loses, for example, in the ACC, Clemson gets in, obviously, but does SMU still get in? They're sitting at 8 right now. And what about Miami at 12? Could they get bumped up if SMU possibly loses? So many questions and so few answers right now with the committee. But for me, I'm looking at where they're going to rank and how they're going to rank these conference champions and how they're going to rank these conference champion losers as well.
So, agree with everything you said, but the most important news I felt like came out of today was Clemson being behind Arizona State and Iowa State, because now, to me at least, it seems like there is a second path for the Big 12 to get a bye. The easiest one, of course, is for UNLV just to beat Boise State. But if Clemson beats SMU, right now they're ranked behind both Big 12 teams. So there's a world where the Big 12 champion would get the bye over the ACC champion if that happened to be Clemson. And based off of the precedent they set tonight, that's what it tells me. Would they stick to that? That's a question for next Sunday. And I don't have faith in the committee to make that decision. But that feels like a very pivotal change. And then I just want to defend BYU. Why are they at 18? It's so ridiculous. They have a good strength of schedule. They have a win over a team in the top 10. One of their losses is to the 15th team in the last couple minutes. They lost to a Kansas team that is pretty on par with teams like Oklahoma, teams like Vanderbilt. But yet BYU down there with 2 losses is an afterthought. They should be in the conversation at least for an at-large spot. And they really aren't, because the committee doesn't even come close to taking them seriously. And there's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. But I do think that they should have the strongest case of any in the Big 12 to get that at-large bid, just because their win. They have a win. If SMU goes on to win the ACC, they have a win on the road at the ACC champion, and it is not even mentioned amongst national talking heads. It's pretty frustrating.
My one thing I want to mention on, you just talked about Clemson there, is I still have a hard time. Like, if Clemson does, I still feel like they would be favored over any Big 12 team just because it's Clemson. I think people do view them as one of the blue bloods in college football. So if it was SMU maybe in that spot, I'd feel a little bit better. I wouldn't worry as much. But with Clemson, I just don't know. And that's the thing, too. You mentioned about BYU and how the committee, I think just in general, views the Big 12. The national perception of the Big 12 is completely skewed. And I'm glad you brought up the Kansas thing with BYU. Kansas was playing as good as anybody in the Big 12. If Kansas and Missouri play today, who I think Missouri's still in the top 25, they're 23.
Yep, they're 19th.
Oh, they just keep moving up. So if Kansas and Missouri play today, Kansas would win that. If all these SEC people love these hypothetical games that they love to play on paper, well, if those two played, I think Kansas would actually win. So for me, again, it's not a bad loss for BYU, but I think just the committee and the national perception of the Big 12 is just so poor. It's just you're going to have a hard time getting those bounces in your favor.
Well, the good news is this sport is played in hypotheticals. This sport is decided by gambling spreads, and that's how we decide the playoff. That's how we decide perception, because how else would you do it?
You can never have enough of those quality losses.
Would you play the games? Is that an option? Nah, let's just stick with this team would be favored over this team on a neutral field due to probability. Yeah, that's real fun, man. We saw what happened when Alabama went to Norman. It wasn't pretty. We saw what happened in Columbus this week. That no one gave Michigan a shot. At some point, the games have to matter. And at some point, the SEC's perception that they've earned, they've certainly earned it over the course of the last 2 decades. But at some point, it's fair and fine to come out and say, you know what? These top line SEC programs aren't as elite as they were in the past. And maybe the playing field across the sport of college football is more equal because these 5-star players, these 4 and 5-star players that used to sit the bench at Alabama, at Georgia, at LSU for 2-3 years before they would become starters, are transferring. That's what's happening. And they're transferring to programs that have less former 4 and 5 stars, and it is leveling the playing field across the sport of football. And I know what the first argument is. Well, look at the NFL draft. Where do the majority of the first and second round picks come from? They come from SEC and Big Ten schools, which is correct. I'm not talking about the high-level talent. The high-level talent will always be starting at your Alabama, your Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. What I'm saying is when those guys get hurt, the depth behind them is not as strong. And that's why I think we see so much parity in college football. And we are way off topic, but that's my little soapbox for the day. It's just been an ongoing frustration all season for me. And I think it just gets worse week by week.
Absolutely. When you see where these teams in the Big 12 are always ranked behind teams, and you can't explain it, the committee can't even explain it for that matter. It's very frustrating. But then again, that is life. That is regular life in as a Big 12 fan. That is just how things have gone, and I really unfortunately just don't see that changing in the near future.
Well, what we know is important is the Big 12 frickin' championship game this Saturday. Iowa State, Arizona State. You've got historically one of the worst programs in the history of college football against a team that was picked to finish dead last, 16 out of 16. 2 underdog Cinderella stories, maybe perception-wise, maybe historically, but these are not patsies. These are 2 really dang good football teams, and they're going to square off in Dallas. It's going to be awesome. So we've just got a few topics that we're going to go over diving into this game, and we're going to bring in our lovely producer, Aiden Wyatt, to lead us through it.
Let's get into it. Jake, this is a tough one for us.
Yeah.
Not really, but it is.
We've both so I adopted Arizona State like really early on in the year. I went back and searched my Twitter. I have a tweet about Cam Scadaboo on September 2nd. Just, I love this guy. I think that's all. I think it just said, I love Scadaboo. And I just over the course of the year adopted Arizona State as my second favorite Big 12 team. They're not going to play Iowa State. They can play spoiler to all these other teams. And I love Kenny Dillingham. I obviously love Scadaboo. And here we are. Those 2 teams squaring off in the Big 12 championship. And Aiden and I we have to put aside our Sun Devils gear for the week.
It's unfortunate. I mean, depends how you look at it. But anyway, Jake, let's get into it. What are your thoughts, Iowa State's offense versus the Arizona State defense?
So, assuming it's primarily Iowa State fans listening, I'll go over the strengths and weaknesses for both sides of the ball. So the Arizona State defense, they're rock solid, really good. They're great against the run. Second in the Big 12, averaging just 116 yards allowed per game. Against the pass, they're in the middle of the pack of the conference. They give up a lot of yards, but not necessarily a lot of efficient performances from the other quarterback. They make the other quarterback work for the yards they get. So that's just a bare bones breakdown of the Arizona State defense. Iowa State, of course, not a great running team, but they certainly try to be every week, and they've had success certain weeks, and they're known to win games through the air. But what this game comes down to for me, as far as the Arizona State defense against the Iowa State offense, is the Iowa State offense still hasn't clicked in a while, completely clicked. Rocco Beck told me after Iowa State's bad loss to Kansas that he hadn't felt like the offense had been in rhythm since the West Virginia game. That was in mid-October. And in the 3 games since then, I still don't think they've been in rhythm completely. So I think altogether Iowa State's offense has been a bit of a letdown, but they have the chance to right that ship if they can go out with an A game, with a B+ game. And one question that I have is, how much will the Dome play into Iowa State's favor? Just with, you saw what the weather was like Saturday night. It was a cold game in Utah. It was a pretty chilly game against Cincinnati. It rained that night. Iowa State hasn't really played on just a really good weather day in a while. And could that be what Rocco Beck needs to maybe get into his top shape? So that's a little bit of what I read the game as in this aspect.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think the only weather you're going to have to worry about in Jerry World is going to be where that sun is, if the sun ever
stupid
comes
window.
Oh, man. But in all seriousness,
I forgot about that.
I know everyone is going to want to talk about Rocco Beck, which is great. But the biggest factor for me with this particular matchup is in the trenches. I want to see how Iowa State's offensive line is going to stack up against a solid Arizona State front. Iowa State's been running the football more effectively over the past few games, but Arizona State, as you mentioned, has the second best run defense in the Big 12. I believe they're allowing 116 yards per game on the ground. However, the good news for Iowa State is that they just ran for $187 against Kansas State, who actually had the best run defense in the Big 12. So it goes to show that Iowa State is capable of running the football even against a good run defense like Kansas State. So, and when it comes to the passing game, Arizona State's secondary isn't great. It isn't bad. The Sun Devils are a middle-of-the-pack team when it comes to pass defense. And to me, that's clearly the weak point of their defense. This is where Iowa State, I feel like, can really take advantage of and stretch out that Arizona State defense. If Rocco Beck can play mistake-free football and not throw one of those pick sixes like he has several times this season, then the Cyclones do have they're capable of having some success through the air. And between Noel and Jaden Higgins, Iowa State should be able to get one of them the football and create some favorable matchups. But be careful, because Arizona State actually does. I think they had the second most interceptions in the Big 12, only behind BYU. But again, for me, the focus for Iowa State is going to be in the trenches. Yeah,
they're plus 11 in turnover margin this year. For me on offense, a lot of it comes back to when are you running the football, because we know Iowa State's going to try to run the football, and they have had success running the football this season. There's no doubt. I think back to that West Virginia game, the K-State game you just mentioned. To me, it's more, how often are you running on 1st and 10 trying to establish the run? It's more situational running for me. And if there's a more balanced attack, especially in those what you would call maybe running situations, if they can throw Arizona State off kilter, I'd feel a lot better about this matchup for Iowa State. I still do, I think, give the lean to Iowa State just with where those strengths and weaknesses line up.
Derek, let's flip it around. Arizona State offense versus Iowa State defense.
Let me start by saying Arizona State has suffered. They've had some terrible injury news here on Monday that Jordan Tyson will not be playing in this game. He went down with a shoulder injury against Arizona, will not be available for this one. So that's a big loss for the Sun Devils because Jordan was their best receiver by a mile. Losing him really hurts, especially against a really good Iowa State secondary. In fact, this may be the best secondary Arizona State has seen all year, so that's something to consider as well. But the good news for them is that Sam Leavitt does not turn the ball over much. 21 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions on the year, which is, I believe, is the fewest amount by any Big 12 starting quarterback who's at least started 5 or more games. So, and he's really impressed me this season with the way he handles himself. He's a lot better than what I thought he was going to be. And as good as Sam Leavitt is, we all know that Arizona State's offense revolves around. It's none other than Cam Scatterbo. He's just one of those running backs who's just so fantastic, so fun to watch. He's not just one of the best running backs in the Big 12, but he's one of the best running backs in all of college football for that matter. He's quick, he's shifty, he can help in pass protections, and he can catch out of the backfield. And my favorite part about him is that he's not afraid to lower his shoulder and run over people. That's something that is really a lost art now in the game of football when it comes to the running back position. But I'm going to be very interested to see how Iowa State's linebackers play against him because he's really actually a threat out of the backfield as well. Looking at the numbers, he's actually the second on the team in receiving yards for the Sun Devils with 468 yards. So, again, Arizona State, they're going to find creative ways to get him the ball, and it's going to be a matter if Iowa State can stop him because there have been times this season where they have struggled against some of these premier running backs. I thought they did a great job last week against Kansas State, but we've seen R.J. Harvey run for big yards. We saw Caleb Johnson in that Iowa game, Taj Brooks in the Texas Tech game. So this defense has had some moments where they have not played their best run defense, and they're going to have to really shore that up on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a weird matchup to break down because you can't really talk about Arizona State the same without their best wide receiver. And it's not just any wide receiver. Jordan Tyson is their leading receiver by over 600 yards. And he's leading over Cam Scatterbo. So there isn't really a clear number 2 or 3 option. So that's a huge deal on who's going to step up. And then as far as Iowa State goes, I think this defense has mainly been different the past 3 weeks because of who they've brought back. Bringing back Dom Orange, Jack Sadowski, and Will McLaughlin has been huge. And on top of that, I just think the young guys have more reps. They have more experience. So I don't really know how much you can judge these teams off of a season whole basis. I know that's how you can do the statistics, but as far as where these groups are trending right now, I think it's a really interesting matchup. But what I do know is Scatterbo is going to get his. That's just the reality of it. But what is that it? Is that 190 yards, 3 touchdowns, 50 yards out of the backfield, or is it an average day for him? Does Iowa State hold him to 115 yards, just a couple catches? I think it's a really interesting opportunity for John Haycock because I honestly don't think you need to switch up the game plan too much from what you did just 5-6 days ago against Kansas State, because Avery Johnson and Sam Leavitt are pretty similar. Leavitt may not be as much of a designed runner, but he's really mobile. He's really good about avoiding pressure and making plays with his legs. And then you've just got a stud running back that you got to account for. I think it's really, really fascinating. And I truly don't know how it's going to go. One interesting nugget that I picked up today in Ames at Iowa State's media availability is a lot of this Arizona State staff came from UNLV. Iowa State played UNLV just back in 2021. So Haycock said that their film started with UNLV and they worked up to now. So there's a lot of familiarity between these two staffs. And it could be interesting. A couple other things, just Nuggets. Mississippi State runs the same defense as Iowa State, the 3-3-5 stack, and Arizona State ran for almost 300 yards against them. Cincinnati runs the same defense as Iowa State. Sam Leavitt did not play in that game. Cincinnati won. You could take it one way where, well, Leavitt hasn't necessarily seen this defense because he didn't play, but you also could take it, well, yeah, they lost, but they didn't have their quarterback. So that'll be an interesting thing for me to see. I know I didn't necessarily land on a specific opinion, but I think Scadaboo's going to get his. It's just a matter of who steps up in the pass game for Arizona State, if anybody.
Jake, who are your X Factor players?
That leads pretty much right into it. I'll start with, I believe it is Chaman Mateer. I think that's how you say his first name. The tight end for Arizona State. Just mentioned it. Someone other than Scadaboo and Leavitt are going to have to step up. Kansas State's tight end, Garrett Oakley, gave Iowa State a lot of fits this past Saturday. Does Arizona State try and do the same with their tight end? He's their fourth leading receiver on the year. He's been pretty good in the red zone catching touchdowns. I think they'll probably try and get him involved. I'll stick with maybe that Arizona State offense versus ISU defense matchup, and I'll go Jack Sadowski for Iowa State. Just been stout since he returned from injury against Cincinnati. He's maybe been the biggest key in Iowa State's effectiveness against the run game. And it's not really fair to just call out one player as an X factor because it's going to take all 11 guys to take down Scadaboo. But if he can play at the level that he's been playing the last 3 weeks, that could certainly go a long way. I'll let you do your X factors, and then I've got two more for the other sides of the ball, if that works.
Yeah, for me, for Iowa State, it's got to be Rocco Becht. His numbers haven't been great at times, and he's had some sloppy moments, as I mentioned earlier, but he's also had some really clutch moments, too, this season. And again, he's had some back-breaking mistakes at times, but then there's times where he puts the offense on his back, leads them to a clutch score in late games. So he has that it factor or that clutch gene, so to speak. So that could be really huge in a game like this. It feels like the moment's never too big for him. And I think Iowa State could have to rely on his arm a lot if they struggle to run the football against a good Arizona State defense. So for me, that's offensively for Iowa State who to watch for. I do want to mention I don't really have anybody defensively, but on both sides, the guy I really like to watch is Dominique Orange. I mean, you mentioned him. When he is in the lineup, he is just a difference maker. He clogs up those running lanes. He wreaks havoc in the passing game as well. So he's a guy to me in the trenches for Iowa State. It's different. We've seen him, when they don't have him in the lineup, what the defense looks like. I think he's a complete game changer for them defensively. So that would be my guy to watch for Iowa State defensively. So as for Arizona State, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I'm not going to pick Cam Scadaboo. I'm going to go with the unknown here with a wide receiver. Actually, you went tight end, so I'm going to go with Xavier Guillory. Why? Because we already know that the offense revolves around Cam, and with Jordan Tyson being out, who is going to be stepping up for Arizona State's offense? I already said that Cam was the second leading receiver on the team, and he plays running back. So it's crazy to think that the receiver with the second most yards on the team has actually 800 less yards than Jordan Tyson, the leader. So if Arizona State really wants to stretch Iowa State's defense and prevent them from keying in on Scadaboo so heavily, they're going to need one of those receivers to step up and really stretch that defense. And this isn't necessarily a player here. It's more of just an X factor, I guess, overall, a unit here I would like to mention. I do want to point out that Arizona State has had some kicking issues this year. That could factor in some tough decisions for Kenny Dillingham and his staff, depending on where they are on the field. So to me, that's something to really keep an eye on. I think Arizona State is dead last in the Big 12 when it comes to field goal percentage.
Yeah, they held open tryouts not too long ago. It's crazy to think that's the same year. So I'll finish with my last two. On the Iowa State offense, I'll go Carson Hansen. It could be a tough day running the ball for Iowa State, but against these good rushing defenses, like a K-State, a UCF, Hansen was able to break free just enough runs. If he can break free and even throw Abu-Sama in that mix, they can just break free a couple runs when the offensive line does get that push. That's what it comes down to. I don't expect this to be a game where Iowa State's able to go out and rush for 6 yards every time they touch the ball, kind of like they were able to do against Utah. I just don't think that's the case. Can those running backs take advantage of the few opportunities they'll get? And then for the Sun Devils, I'll go Javon Robinson. He's their best defensive back. He's only allowed 11 receptions this season. I don't know if they'll stick him to just Higgins, to just Knoll for the game, or if it'll be a mix of both. But he will have a very important job because it's hard enough to shut down one of those guys. If you don't shut down either of Higgins or Knoll, it can be really hard to stop the Iowa State offense.
All right, here's the toughest question of the night because it's like looking in the mirror, it feels like, after Kenny Dillingham's press conference. Derek, let's dive into Matt Campbell versus Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, I really wasn't sure when I saw this on our topic list, how to answer this, and I'm not really sure how these two stack up against one another, but I guess the good news here is that Matt Campbell has just more experience overall as a head coach. He's been in Jerry World before, played for a Big 12 title before. He's going to know the ins and outs of scheduling and maybe how to prepare for this game. And Campbell's played in a lot of big games, too, as I mentioned. He's already coached the Big 12 title game once, coached in New Year's Six Bowl against Oregon a few years back. So how will that factor into Saturday? I don't know, but I think it does count for something. And as for Kenny Dillingham, I would say just keep being yourself. Don't change who you are or change up your approach. I think a lot of times we see these younger head coaches tighten up too much in big games simply because they haven't been there before. So just keep on being yourself. That's how you got here. So why would you change that now? And the other thing is, I will say that these two programs are really a reflection of their head coaches. While Campbell and Dillingham may not have the same personality, it doesn't really matter because there's a reason why these two coaches are in this game on Saturday. It's because they're good at what they do. Both of these guys were really, truly born to coach the game of football.
Yeah, I didn't approach this more as like who has the edge, but more so how many similarities are between the two, especially just this Arizona State team, Dillingham's second year, comparing that to Campbell's second year back in 2017, came from nowhere. You've got probably a couple NFL guys spread around the roster, but other than that, it's a collective team effort that has made for one of the very best stories in all of college football. I wrote this in my notes before today's press conference, and I said there's a lot of David Montgomery and Cam Scattaboo, and Campbell actually came out and said that today. And then again, both solid defenses. So I think there's a lot in common between where these guys have started. Dillingham actually went up to Ames back in 2019 and just shadowed Campbell at practice. So that was an interesting nugget that I learned today at the press conference. There's a lot in common between these guys, but I do agree with what you said that Campbell's experience and prestige in this game, I think, gives him a slight edge. But at the same time, Arizona State has been playing with house money all year, and that is reflected in how they play. That reflects Dillingham. And if they continue on that, that's something that is really dangerous, especially when you have the talent all around. So I'm really excited to see what that matchup looks like across the sidelines. And then we know how fiery Dillingham gets. It's awesome. Campbell in these big games, when he gets fired up, it's one of the coolest things ever. He was so fired up Saturday night. I don't think people have to be reminded of the 2020 Big 12 championship. I think we're going to see a lot of passion from both guys with the headsets on.
Last one here. I think we know the answer to this, Jake. Biggest game in Iowa State history?
I think it is. Truly, I don't like how a lot of people this week have downplayed the 2020 Big 12 championship. I've heard that a lot where it's like, oh yeah, it was COVID. Iowa State didn't have a shot at the playoff. I don't necessarily think Iowa State had a realistic shot at the playoff, but they were 6th in the college football playoff rankings heading into that game. A win and a couple dominoes fell in the other way. Who knows what could have happened? That was a massive, massive game and a massive opportunity for the program. With that being said, I do think that this is the biggest game in program history. A spot in the college football playoff is on the line. The chance to end a 112-year drought is on the line. There's going to be a full house. There's going to be more fans. I just think altogether it's bigger. And then you factor in just the future of the Big 12, the future of the program. There is not a head and shoulders above program in this conference right now. The more conference championships you win, the more you represent your conference in the playoff, the more marquee wins you get, the better players you're going to get, and the better chance that you'll have to take a step up. So all that being said, it is the biggest game in the history of Iowa State football.
That's fair to say, and I do want to mention that we did not have a cracking one for the clone segment today, but I am going to crack one for the clones here because
there we go.
They freaking deserve it after what they've been able to accomplish. And I'm not 100% sure if this is the biggest game in Iowa State history. Why? Because I'm 1,000% sure it is the biggest game in Iowa State history. And speaking of history, this team has already a lot on the line. They've already made some history on their own. Last weekend against Kansas State, secured their 10th victory of the season, which is a first in program history. And I would just like to remind our listeners that I predicted that before the season, so had to give myself a little pat on the back there. So, and the other piece of history is there that Iowa State has not won a conference championship game in over 100 years. Like, this team truly is a historic team, and they have an opportunity to cement their name in the record books by yet again bringing home some hardware. So the last time Iowa State played for a Big 12 title, I don't really want to say it, but it almost felt like they were kind of just happy to get there. They were happy to be there against Oklahoma. This time, to me, it does feel different. Maybe it's because the opponent, I don't know, but it feels like they are coming in and they're expecting to walk out as champions, and this team is more than capable of actually doing that.
It's going to be a good one, and I like what you said about that one. There was still a bit of that David versus Goliath feel in 2020. Iowa State had already beat Oklahoma earlier that year, but still, you were going up against a team that had been there so many years, and it's a little old Iowa State. It's not like that anymore. It's equal playing field, and it is a chance for Iowa State to do something unprecedented, and that's a lot of fun. If you're going to make it down to Dallas, please, please, please stop at Freedom Tire before you go. The last thing you want is car problems on Interstate 35 in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. If you stop at Freedom Tire, they're not going to let that happen. They've got locations in Altoona, Ames, Fleur Drive, West Des Moines, and Hickman in Urbandale. Quentin Crowner and his team will get you taken care of. He's a big Cyclone fan, so you know you can trust a Cyclone fan trying to get you to Dallas. Go out, change your tires, get your car winterized, and just make sure everything is in tip-top shape before you go. And even if you're not going to Dallas, we still recommend that you use Freedom Tire for all of your vehicle needs. Aiden, come on in with an Iowa trivia question.
Lock in, Derek. All right. Let's lock in here.
I've got my thinking cap on, so I'm ready to go. I'm locked in today.
All right. Mildred Day, famous Iowan for this very specific reason. She invented a dessert that is extremely famous now. Can you name the dessert?
Oh.
I didn't know where you're going with that for a second, but I think I got it now.
It's a famous dessert. Where is it like nationally famous, or is it Iowa famous, or is
definitely
it
national?
National, okay.
Yeah. Like something you could buy at the store now.
Oh. Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think. Like, keep trying to tie it to Iowa, so I don't really know. I don't know. Is it any kind of pudding or something?
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope.
A salad, like a kind of like a fruit salady.
It's a
kind of thing?
bar.
It's a bar,
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it.
like a chocolate bar.
No, like a dessert bar, if that makes sense.
Oh, I don't know. A dessert. I can't even think of anything that would come to mind. A dessert bar. I have no idea.
Is it Scotcheroos?
No,
Really?
close. I'll give you one hint. You might think of it as a treat.
Well, yeah, it's a dessert, right?
It's a treat.
Rice Krispies?
Oh god, it's a Rice Krispie. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, once he said it, okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
I got it now.
There you go. I don't know if they still do, but at one point, I think it was invented at Iowa State or something.
Wow.
And they would give you a Rice Krispie treat on your visit at Iowa State. I don't know if they still do that or not.
I
but-
didn't know that Rice Krispie treats were invented in Iowa.
See, you learned something new. Well, also, what are Scotcheroos? You're gonna have to explain.
So
that
a
one.
Scotcheroo is a Rice Krispie treat with just peanut butter on top of it.
Oh,
It's the best.
okay. Never mind. I shouldn't even.
Well,
ask
peanut butter and chocolate.
that. I shouldn't
really
even
good.
ask that.
Yeah,
I
it,
should not have asked
it's
that.
You need
either
to get cultured, Derek.
it's peanut
Instead
butter.
of beans for breakfast, have a goddamn Scotcheroo, okay?
It's pretty much peanut butter and chocolate, or just one or the other.
I will die
They're
on
so
the hill.
good.
I will die on the hill for the beans for breakfast. That's not going to go away.
Insanity. It's insanity.
You're putting peanut butter on Rice Krispie treats. Who does that? That doesn't even sound right.
Acting like we're the crazy ones. You know,
no,
America won the Revolutionary War. You don't have to eat beans for breakfast anymore, okay?
Oh man. Oh.
We've gone off the rails. Let's get into some report cards. Derek's food takes F.
Oh. Oh, that's yeah. I'm not much of a report card man myself. I was always trying to change the grades, but then I think once they went to number grades, not much you can do about that. And once everything went online.
I think Neil Brown's going to want to change his grade. We'll start with West Virginia. Derek, how would you grade West Virginia's 2024 season?
I wanted to go F here, but since they made a bowl game, unlike some of the other teams on this list, I gave them a D plus for the grade here. I thought there were some bright spots for this team. They had a top 5 rushing offense of the Big 12, mostly thanks to Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. But outside of that, this team really didn't have anything to hang their hat on. The quarterback situation with Garrett Green and Nico Martial was weird. They didn't really have any weapons that scare you on the outside. And I mean, outside of the running backs I just mentioned, I just didn't feel like they had any pop or spark offensively. And defensively, they were just a total disaster, especially in the secondary. Bottom 3 pass defense in the conference, and every single team knew exactly where to attack that defense. There's a reason why Neil Brown ended up firing Jordan Leslie mid-season, and funny enough, Neil Brown got himself fired on Sunday too, so they're both gone. So, and if I could describe the Neil Brown era at West Virginia, it would be boring. I couldn't think of any better word than boring for it. He was 37 and 35 overall, 25 and 28 in Big 12 play during his 6 seasons in Morgantown. Simply not good enough, and I've said it before on the show, but at no point during Neil Brown's tenure at West Virginia did I ever feel like his team had a shot at winning a Big 12 title. They were never serious contenders, and it's because they never beat anybody they weren't supposed to. They won games at a lot of times that they were favored in, but I felt like every time they weren't favored, they lost. And this program was stuck in 6 years of mediocrity, and their fans deserve so much better. West Virginia fans are excellent fans. They're super passionate. I absolutely love them. And this West Virginia, let's be honest here, is West Virginia a program that is going to win a Big 12 title every single year? Even in the new Big 12, like right now without Texas and Oklahoma, they're not. But at the very least, they can compete every couple of years, and they just never did that under Neil Brown. So I'm glad he is gone. I know the buyout was a little bit high, but I'm glad West Virginia finally just said enough is enough, and we're going to move on.
I'll go D plus. Brown, of course, is canned. He deserved to be. But I'm not going to act like it's some disastrous season when I didn't really expect much out of them. I did think last year was a bit of an anomaly and kind of expected them to be in that 6-6, 7-5 range. It probably would have been a C- or maybe a C if it weren't for Saturday. But to lose by that much in that fashion, I think that was enough to knock it down to a D+. And I'll be super interested to see who they bring in to replace Brown. Because like you said, it's a very passionate fan base. It's maybe not the richest athletic department or richest state, but they've got a rich history and they've got a lot of support. And that program deserves better than what they've gotten for the last 6 years. We'll move on to Oklahoma State. I'm going to just flat out give them an F. They were my preseason pick to win the league, and they went 0-9. Ollie Gordon, invisible for most of the season. The quarterback play was about as bad as can be, and somehow the defense was even worse than the quarterback play. I'm not sure I can remember a more disappointing season by any team in any sport in my life. To return as much as they did, 19 starters, the entire offensive line, Doak Walker, and go 0-9, it is perplexing. It might even be worse than an F.
Yeah, I just want to say before I start my little rant here that I am so glad this is the final time I have to talk about this team next year or this year, and I can just kind of move on to 2025 with them. My grade would be F, F, and another F. This team, complete and utter disaster. Bringing back Alan Bowman for a 12th year turned out to be a terrible idea. He looked washed up, somehow got worse, and wasting arguably the best running back in the nation, and Ollie Gordon should be a felony. Offensive line was so bad they couldn't give Ollie any breathing room, and it just hurt the offense even more because their quarterback situation was just in the dumps. I guess there's only one bright spot. It's Malachi Smith. He ended up getting a couple starts late for them, so he might be the future for Oklahoma State at quarterback. I just don't know. And let me just say that offensive coordinator Casey Dunn should have been fired days ago. The fact that we still haven't heard anything about it is embarrassing for that program. Defensively, they were somehow even worse, second to last in the Big 12 in pass defense, dead last in run defense. In fact, I looked it up today. They finished with the sixth worst rushing defense in the FBS, 215 yards per game on the ground. The tackling was bad. The effort was pathetic. And like you mentioned, this team wasn't just the biggest disappointment of the Big 12. I think they were the biggest disappointment in college football. They were supposed to be competing for a Big 12 title, and instead they went winless in conference play for the first time in 30 years. Mike Gundy needs to really look in the mirror, figure out if he wants to keep coaching or not, figure out if he wants to keep doing this or not, and if he does, he needs to get off his ass and make some changes. I would suggest cleaning house with some of the coaching staff, bringing in some new faces, some new ideas, kind of get this program rejuvenated, because this is the second time in 3 years. I know last season was kind of that outlier where they went to the Big 12 title game, but second time in 3 years where this team has really underachieved. That's not a good look.
Well, and last year they had the blowout loss to South Alabama too. So it looked like it was trending towards rock bottom, and they somehow bounced off the deck and responded, but they really reverted right back to rock bottom this year. It'll be a pivotal offseason in Stillwater, what they do with the coaching staff, what they do in the transfer portal. Because if it's a repeat of this next year, there's no way Mike Gundy's back in 2026. We'll move on to UCF. Gus Malzahn is out. What's your grade of the Knights?
What's the last letter for UCF?
Florida. I think that starts with an F.
It's F. That's all I needed to know, because that's what I'm giving them for the season. First off, we haven't talked about this in a really long time. The KJ Jefferson experiment turned out to be a complete failure. They paid him all that money to come to Orlando. The man could even complete a 5-yard pass. It was a total quarterback carousel this year for them. I
was doing my notes for the show, and I wrote down KJ Jefferson, and I kind of forgot that he was even a part of the season. It was so long ago, and it was such a disaster that they moved on from him really early. Like, they moved on from him before they came to Ames, and that was like October 7th or something like that. So that feels like almost a different season.
Yeah, and to me, the fact that they bailed on him so early, and you could see the writing on the wall between game 2 or 3 with him, and you just knew he wasn't going to be the guy. So I'm wondering what the hell Gus Malzahn saw in practice that was like, okay, this is going to be our guy. He was worth paying. It just never worked out. And the one thing that really wasn't complicated with this team was R.J. Harvey. He made the heart and soul of this team, carried the offense on his back, led the Big 12 in rushing, was arguably the best running back in college football outside of Ashton Genty. The fact that he wasn't a finalist for the Doak Walker Award is complete bullshit, and he should be there, and he has the numbers to back it up. Between R.J. Harvey and Kobe Hudson, they were really the two guys that carried UCF's offense. And much like West Virginia here, kind of ironically enough, they also fired their defensive coordinator when they let go of Ted Roof midseason. To me, that was just a retread hire from the beginning. Never made sense to me. And of course, much like West Virginia, their head coach, Gus Malzahn, no longer the head coach, resigned on Sunday and took the offensive coordinator job at Florida State. Good luck to you there, buddy. Look, Gus was a nice guy, great recruiter. The problem is he just couldn't turn his success recruiting into on the field success. And to be honest with you, like, this program deserves better than Gus Malzahn. UCF has the money and the resources to be a successful program in the Big 12. They should be competing. Unlike West Virginia here, they should be competing for conference championships instead of barely making a bowl game. They truly are a premier Big 12 job in my eyes.
Yeah, they're a sleeping giant. I still feel that. And I thought Gus Malzahn is the right guy for the job. When it was announced, gosh, what was that, 2020, 2021, that the 4 schools were joining the Big 12, I thought from that day UCF was going to be ready. UCF was going to come in and maybe not be a full-fledged contender, but they were going to be in the mix. I thought that last year. I thought that this year, and I was wrong. I'll go with a D- for UCF. Before the year, I didn't think there was any shot that Malzahn would be gone by the end of the season. With the amount of talent they have, what they showed in some games, that they showed in Ames, that's a lethal rushing attack if they just had anything through the air. And to put a bow on this season, I want to move to who they're going to hire. And a lot of the rumors have seemingly been Jamie Chadwell from Liberty, which Chadwell, of course, had a great 2023. They went undefeated, but got obliterated by Oregon in their New Year's Six Bowl. And this year, Liberty was a disappointment. They had the easiest schedule maybe in America and didn't run the table. And listen to this stat. Liberty ranks 120th in the country in passing offense. I can't imagine that's what Knight fans want after what these last 2 years have been, where they can't throw the ball. I think they got to go out, get something different, try something new, try a new identity, and get some change in Orlando. Because if they make the right hire, they are one of the 3 to 5 best jobs in this conference.
Agreed.
All right, we'll close with Arizona. I'll go with a D. If we're judging by my expectations, it's an F. So I will give myself an F for my evaluation of Arizona before the season. This was not a good season whatsoever for Brent Brennan, and they've got a lot of questions. But in hindsight, this roster was just not built to compete at a power forward level. Outside of Tetairoa McMillan, who's going to be a first or second round NFL draft pick, and Noah Fafita, who he had his ups and downs. He definitely didn't live up to my expectations of what I expected. It was just a really bad season for Arizona, and Fafita is reportedly entering the portal. McMillan, of course, off to the NFL. Arizona might be the worst program in the Big 12 heading forward, and it could get a lot worse.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to go D here as well. And personally, I didn't think they were going to be that great this season. In fact, I had them as my most overrated team in the Big 12 before the season started. It truly is a shame that this team wasted Noah Fafita and McMillan at wide receiver. Those two could have been the best two to ever come through that program possibly, but unfortunately they just had zero help. Fafita spent the entire season running for his life and had no run game to help him out. And then you had McMillan, who faced so many double teams this year because Arizona literally had nobody else step up at wide receiver this season. And defensively, they weren't great either. Third worst scoring defense in the Big 12, second worst run defense, bottom half in pass defense as well. So, and let's be real here. This team was not ready to compete in year one in the Big 12, despite having two of the arguably the best players offensively. This team was not capable of competing at this level. And I'm not sure how Brent Brennan is going to fix that by next year. I really don't. I was not a fan of the hire. I truly think it is a ticking time bomb situation with him. And it's so weird. I've never seen a fan base in the Big 12 more willing to get rid of a head coach after one season than Arizona fans right now.
Yeah, and it's not a great program historically. They had a really good year under Jed Fish last season. And that's where I guess my advice to Arizona fans is be patient. But I get the frustration. That was a disaster of a season. And if it doesn't work out next season, or if it doesn't even come close, I do think they should move on. I know they made wholesale changes within the coordinators already. So I don't feel good about Arizona going forward. And I still need to make a trip over to WealthCharter because I lost a lot of money buying stock on those guys. But yeah, that'll wrap up our report cards for today. Go through 4 of them, about 5 minutes each, just a good way to put a bow on these teams that we enjoy talking about throughout the season. We'll get to our picks in just a minute, but Aiden's coming on in with a random Big 12 quarterback.
All right, fellas, this quarterback spent 5 years in the Big 12 before transferring to an SEC school. He redshirted his freshman year and then was a 4-year starter, threw for nearly 10,000 yards and had 70 touchdowns in the air.
Wow.
Freshman of the year, his rookie year in the Big 12. He was a first team All Big 12 selection.
Is it Spencer Sanders?
It is, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Wow.
Go. I'm back.
That might have been the best one you've ever done. That was impressive.
Thank you.
Even I was still thinking about that. Wow.
I was just, it had to be a recent guy. And
yeah,
because typically, it just wasn't normal for a really good to elite quarterback a decade ago to transfer elsewhere after being somewhere for 4 years. So
yeah, my mind was starting to go. I was just thinking great Big 12 quarterbacks that were just ended up in the SEC somehow, and there's been a couple, not that many. So one of the ones that came to my mind when he first started talking about that was Jared Stidham at Baylor, but I don't remember if we've already talked about him before. I remember he went to Auburn after he went to Baylor, but I knew he wasn't at Baylor for 5 years. So that was a really good answer. That was really good.
Man, that feels good.
Did y'all cheat? I feel like y'all cheated on that.
No, I didn't.
No?
My brain just must be locked in.
I'm just kidding. Not like me, like me and Aiden on that one Iowa question where
the stupid
no collusion this time around.
The stupid Burlington windy road. Gosh. And I should have known that answer too. That's what makes me mad. All right. This week we've obviously only got one Big 12 game to pick. So we're going to pick the other big conference championship games. Apologies to the Sun Belt, the MAC, and any other conference championships. I'll be honest, I don't feel educated enough to make picks on that. So we're going to go down the line with the Mountain West, the American, SEC, Big 10, ACC, and Big 12. Let's start out in Boise. This is not a neutral field game. It is in Boise on the blue turf. The Broncos favored by 4. The over-under's 58.5 against UNLV for a 7 o'clock kickoff Friday night on Fox.
Yeah, if this game was on a neutral field or maybe in Vegas somehow, I probably would like to take UNLV. But with this game being on the blue, Ashton Genty, obviously Heisman hopeful there. I just see all the momentum for Boise State. Those fans are going to be fired up out in Boise. I mean, this is really a playoff game, too. Not just a chance to win the Mountain West. It's a chance for a playoff spot for the Broncos. So as much it'd be great for UNLV to win this game for the Big 12, but I just think Boise State at home, I got to take the Broncos.
The forecast, a high of 40 and a rain sleet mix as of now. Oh no, I looked at Saturday. Doesn't look like any bad weather on Friday. That's my bad. But still, chilly weather for a team from Las Vegas. That's a tough place to go play. UNLV has all the motivation in the world as well, but I'm just going to take Boise and lay the 4 points. Feels like it should be higher. It feels like it should be closer to a touchdown. And maybe I'm taking the bait, but I'll go Boise -4. Moving to the American, another Friday night game on ABC at 7 o'clock. Tulane is favored by 5.5 points. The over-under is 46.5 against Army.
I just watched Tulane. I was not that impressed after watching that Memphis game with them. Army obviously got blown out by Notre Dame earlier this season. That really kind of put a damper, I guess, on the season for them because they had a chance to really do something special this year. But with that said, I think Army is going to hang in there. I think they're going to run the ball using that triple option just enough. I think they're going to find some success. I like the way Army's still playing despite that one game against Notre Dame. They've played really well all season. So, in that 5.5 point spread, I think I'm going to take Army here.
I'll go with the under for one of the reasons you just mentioned. Army's going to run the ball. Army goes under a lot. Tulane was really sloppy against Memphis. I could see this game being a grinder. We'll move on to the SEC. Georgia and Texas, the rematch. The Longhorns favored by 2.5. The over-under is 49.5 for a 3 o'clock kick on ABC.
I tweeted this out the other day. Isn't it funny how Texas, in the last 14 years of them being in the Big 12, they made the conference championship game. They won it one time. They won the Big 12 one time in their last 14 years in the conference, and here they are, year one in the SEC, already playing for an SEC championship. I find that funny. I know some people won't, but I'm taking Georgia here. Anytime Georgia has one of these big key games here, I like the Bulldogs. I think Kirby Smart's going to be fired up for this one, especially after what they showed against Georgia Tech, where they almost lost. I think Kirby's going to light a fire under their ass, so I'm taking the Bulldogs here.
It's hard to beat the same team twice, but Georgia is so good in these spots. Carson Beck's playing a little bit better. I don't really know if he can play much worse than he did in Austin. They still dominated Texas in that game. Ewer's health is in question. I'll take Georgia blindly in spots like this. In the Big Ten, a night game on CBS, Penn State against Oregon. The Ducks favored by 3.5. The over-under is 49.5.
This one's tough for me. I think Penn State is playing better than what they're probably better than what they thought they were going to be. But they just haven't they have not beaten anybody with the pulse this season, and I just don't know if I trust them. Oregon, on the other hand, I feel like they really hit their stride this season, especially later on. I just like Oregon. I don't know what it is about the Ducks. I can't remember his name now, the quarterback. Dylan Gabriel winning the Heisman as my preseason Heisman pick. I don't know why I drew a blank there, but I still like the Ducks. I think they legitimately have a chance to be one of those teams who ends up in the semifinals. So for me, I'm going to take Oregon. I just don't trust James Franklin and Penn State in these big-time matchups.
Because they don't win them. It makes the line perplexing to me. It scares me so much, and it's been a common theme of this show where I come across these rat lines, and then I just take it. And I'm going to take the rat poison again. Oregon should be favored by more. It doesn't make sense to me. And I will not pick Penn State in one of these games until they win one. I will not pick them against Ohio State. I will not pick them against Michigan when they're at their best. And I'm not going to pick them on Saturday night against Oregon. Oregon's the better team, and James Franklin's teams have not come up in one of these spots yet. And I don't think that trend ends on Saturday. To the ACC, Clemson and SMU, a vintage classic ACC matchup. The Mustangs favored by 2.5. The over-under is 56.5 for a 7:00 kick on ABC.
Much like Penn State, I just don't know how much I trust SMU. Now, we'll say after that BYU loss, they went on an absolute tear. They looked really good, really impressive team. Clemson coming off a disappointing loss to South Carolina last weekend. But this team still has a chance to get to the playoff. SMU being their first year as a new member of the ACC conference, don't know how they're going to handle this and being prepared for a team like Clemson. Like, Clemson definitely has its weak points, but they are still Clemson. There's still plenty of talent across the board there for the Tigers. I don't know. Dabo's coached in a lot of these games, a ton of ACC championship games, won a bunch of them too. I think this season, I'm going to take the upset here. I think I'm going to pull the trigger on Clemson.
I'm going Clemson too. It's another one of those things. They've been pretty good after losses this season. Dabo's coached in national championships. He has gone head-to-head with Nick Saban, and other than Kirby Smart, Dabo is the only guy who has been able to say that he actually went head-to-head with the greatest college football coach of our lifetime. I like them in this spot against an SMU team that really hasn't been challenged that much this season. And if Clemson wins, that makes Sunday all the more interesting. And we'll close with what else? The Big 12. It all comes down to this. That has been what this entire podcast has been for all year long. It's been for this very moment. Iowa State against Arizona State. The latest line had the Sun Devils favored by 2.5, or no, just 2. The over-under is 51 for an 11 a.m. kickoff on ABC Local 5 if you're watching in Des Moines.
As I mentioned earlier, it's been over 100 years since Iowa State last won their conference championship. It's been way too damn long for Iowa State. Like I said before, Matt Campbell was here a few years back. That team was different. I felt like they were happy to be here. This year, they're there. They expect to win the game. And damn it, you see the hat on my head. They're winning this freaking game. Give me the Cyclones to take home the Big 12 championship.
Iowa State is 6-0 against Big 12 newcomers since 2023. That 3-3-5 defense has been an advantage when playing teams for the first time. There's no question that Cam Scatterbo is going to get his. It is in question if anybody else on the Sun Devils will be able to get theirs. For me, this game comes down to Rocco Becht. Can Rocco Becht get Iowa State to 28 points and avoid the disaster plays? If he can do both of those things, Iowa State will win the Big 12 for the first time ever, will win a conference championship for the first time since 1912, and that is what's going to happen. Give me Iowa State +2, but ignore the plus. Just give me the money line. The Cyclones are going to win the Big 12 on Saturday. And
Boom.
Derek's got the money to show for it already.
Boom.
He can see the future. It's going to be a fun one, man.
I'm so excited.
I'm
I
so
can't
excited to drive down to Dallas. I cannot wait.
Well,
First
I'm
time there.
Not jealous of your drive, but I'm excited to be in Arlington.
Nah, it's only 10 hours. It's the difference between us Islands and you Texans.
Oh, man.
I'm driving across Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas.
Yeah.
10 hours, and Derek's flying from one part of the state to the other. It'd be like flying from Sioux City to Des Moines. It just doesn't happen up here in these parts.
Hey, when you get a $65 flight on Southwest back in July, you take it. It's a beautiful 30-minute flight from San Antonio to Love Field. I love that flight. It's my favorite thing ever. It's the best flight.
I would
Best
take
flight in
advantage
America.
of that. I'm just giving
Exactly.
you crap. I would definitely take advantage of that. Well, last week I edged out Derek in our final Big 12 picks. I went 4-4, went 3-5. So I got a minute of fame, and I want to talk about Keyshawn Gilbert. We'll talk some Cyclone basketball. So Keyshawn Gilbert is one of the most fun players in the entire country to watch. There's no doubt. If you watched a second of Maui, you couldn't take your eyes off of him. What I want to complain about is people complaining about Keyshawn. So Gilbert is a risk taker. There's no doubt about that. He is completely out of control to the point where he's under control, and that's how he plays. And it makes for incredible basketball. It is incredible to watch. But what grinds my gears is the people who will tweet out, "Oh my gosh, Keyshawn Gilbert, what a layup." They'll retweet the highlights. They'll say, "This guy's electric." And then turn around when he has a turnover and say, "What are you doing, Keyshawn?" The point is, you can't have great Keyshawn Gilbert 70% of the time without, bad Keyshawn Gilbert dribbling into a double team the other 30% of the time. There are some basketball players that's just what it's like, and it's basketball. He's not a quarterback. I don't want my quarterback having those 70% high highs, but the 30% lowest to lows, like we'll say Anthony Richardson for the Colts. It's basketball. There's so many possessions in a game. I love Keyshawn Gilbert. I love watching him play. And for me, as long as he's keeping those lows to 25 to 30% of the time, bring me all the highs that come with it. Aiden, I know, Derek, you're not a huge basketball guy, so I want to rain check to make sure I'm not too off base with Aiden.
No, I think you're totally right. He's definitely a player where, we look back at the game against Auburn where he kind of drives, I don't know if you want to call it a triple team, but it was certainly closing in on him. And
Yeah.
I think it was the very next day against Dayton, he did the exact same thing and scored on it.
And it won them the game.
Yeah. So I don't want to say you got to take the good with the bad because there's a lot more good than there is bad, but yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's just been it's a frustrating thing for me, and I get it. It's fans. It's how fans watch. It's how people watch sports. Like, oh, why is he doing that? Oh, do that again. That was awesome. When the process is the same and the result's different. Oh gosh, okay. I sat in a Matt Campbell press conference for too long today. We need to get this show over with before I start saying we got to become the best versions of ourselves. But
You had to bring up Anthony Richardson from the Indianapolis Colts, who I absolutely despise. I hate the freaking Colts.
I forgot.
You brought up him, and then a couple weeks, or last week or the week before, you brought up an Iowa quarterback. It's just you're bringing up all these people and these quarterbacks and these teams I just don't like as examples. We're gonna have to find you some new examples.
I forgot that you're a fan of a team that's in a division that's not really a division. There's nothing in common between Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Houston, and Tennessee. Gun to my head, I forgot that the Colts and Texans were technically rivals.
When you grow up watching Peyton Manning slaughter your team for a decade, you tend to grow some hate for that particular team.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I get it now. That's my bad. I'll be better next week. That's on me. I got him, coach. But yeah, I can't wait for Saturday. I'll see you down in Texas. We'll try and do some convincing to get Aiden with us, but for now, if you're in Texas, hit us up. Love to meet some of our listeners, and more important than anything between me and you is cheer loud, cheer on the Cyclones, and just have a heck of a trip. It's going to be an awesome time, and we will be so excited to be right here with you next week at the same time to react to everything that happens down in Dallas. Thank you to WealthCharter Retirement planning and tax. And thanks to Freedom Tire, Channel Seed, and all the other great sponsors on Iowa Everywhere. This has been Bigger Than 12.